All right, let's talk tech trends. Every year, it feels like we're just buried under an avalanche of the next big thing. But how do you know what's a genuine game changer and what's just expensive noise? Today, we're going to build a framework to help you do just that.
Okay, let's dive right in, because getting this wrong isn't just a small mistake. It has a huge impact on your budget, on your strategy. We're talking about real money and serious resources getting thrown at things just because they're buzzy. And that brings us to the core question every leader has to ask themselves. Is your innovation strategy really about building value for your business? Or, let's be honest, is it just a reaction to that fear of missing out, that FOMO?
To really see what's at stake, let's take a quick trip down memory lane. You remember Google Glass, right? It was supposed to be the future of computing right on our faces, but it kind of crashed and burned thanks to privacy concerns and the fact that, well, nobody really knew what to do with it. Or what about 3D TVs? For a couple of years there, every single manufacturer was screaming that this was the future of your living room. A few years later, they pretty much stopped making them entirely. Turns out, people just didn't want to wear those clunky glasses at home.
And of course, who could forget blockchain? The promise was that it was going to completely upend, every industry in just a few years. And while it definitely found some cool, specific uses, that massive, earth-shattering revolution didn't quite happen, did it? And the financial fallout from that blockchain hype is just mind-blowing. A report from Virtualization Options LLC, that's a tech research firm based in Colorado, found that between 2018 and 2022, companies wrote off over $25 billion from failed blockchain projects alone. That is an incredible amount of money to waste chasing hype.
So, why does this keep happening? It feels like we're stuck in a loop, right? Well, it turns out there's a really predictable pattern to how these technologies rise and fall, and if you understand it, you can avoid getting swept away.
And this is it. It's called the Gartner Hype Cycle. Think of it like a map that shows us the emotional roller coaster a new technology goes on, from the initial spark of an idea all the way to becoming a useful, everyday tool. This is our guide through the noise.
So the cycle breaks the journey down into 5 phases. It all kicks off with the innovation trigger, a cool new breakthrough. Then you get some early publicity, maybe a few success stories, and bam, you hit the peak of inflated expectations. But when reality doesn't match the hype, things come crashing down into the trough of disillusionment. Now, if a technology is going to survive, it has to slowly climb the slope of enlightenment as people figure out what it's actually good for, before finally hitting the plateau of productivity. The scary part? A lot of tech never makes it out of that trough.
And you know what? Blockchain is the perfect real-world example of this. It hit that peak of hype right around 2017, with people saying it would change everything. Then came the crash, the reality check, when something like 90% of enterprise projects just stalled. Now it's climbing that slope, finding real value in specific areas like supply chain logistics, a much smaller, more realistic role than first promised.
Okay, so the big question is, how do you use this? How do you avoid getting caught up at the peak only to give up in the trough? It all comes down to asking a few really tough questions to keep your strategy grounded in reality, not just the headlines.
First question, and maybe the most important. Forget the futuristic promises and focus on right now. Are there real, documented cases of this tech actually making or saving a company money? Not in a lab, but out in the wild, in a business like yours.
Next up, you got to look at how widely it's being used. Is this technology spreading across different fields, like finance and healthcare and manufacturing, or is it kind of stuck in one little niche? Trends that have real legs tend to pop up in all sorts of different places.
This one's huge. How can you tell if something is ready for prime time or if it's still just a science project? Well, a great indicator is a healthy market. If a technology is mature, you'll see a bunch of different companies offering real, competing products, not just a couple of startups with a cool demo.
And finally, you have to demand proof. Look for detailed case studies from organizations you actually trust. You have to get past the slick marketing from vendors and find some independent analysis that backs up all the big claims.
All right, we've got our framework. Now for the fun part. Let's put some of today's biggest tech buzzwords under the microscope and see what we find.
Let's start with the one everyone is talking about, generative AI. The hype is absolutely off the charts. 91% of Fortune 500 companies are running pilots. But, and this is a big but, what's the reality? A recent Gartner report found that less than 5% have actually put those projects into full production. That is a massive gap between playing with something and actually using it.
And we see a really similar story with 5G. The promise was this incredible connectivity revolution. The reality, as you've probably noticed yourself, is that deployment is still super uneven. A Deloitte study showed that almost half of all businesses are still wondering if the return on investment is really there for them.
Now, this is where it gets super interesting. A recent University of Phoenix survey actually asked IT professionals what they thought was overhyped versus underhyped. And just look at this chart. They see things like the metaverse and even Gen AI as significantly overhyped. But what do they think is being overlooked? Quantum computing, a technology with absolutely enormous long-term potential, but it's not getting that same daily buzz. So what do you do with all this? How do you actually move forward and innovate without getting burned by the hype? Well, it's all about shifting your mindset. It's about innovating with intention.
The key is to stop chasing and start testing, but smartly. Run small pilot programs, but make sure you have crystal clear success metrics before you even start. And develop a technology radar, a system to scan for what's new so you can make proactive choices instead of just reacting to the noise.
And the cost of not being this careful? It's staggering. Remember that report from Virtualization Options LLC? They found that organizations that just jump on every new trend waste nearly a third of their IT budget on tech that ultimately goes nowhere. Just think about what your business could do with that money. So let's end with this thought. Real innovation isn't about being the first to adopt every shiny new toy. It's about carefully choosing the right tools to solve real problems and truly transform your business. It's not measured by how many trends you chase, but by the actual value you create. So the final question isn't just what's next, it's what problem are we trying to solve, and is this truly the best way to solve it?